Hello and welcome to a What Sold video. This is everything that sold for me on not live selling platforms from January 22nd to January 31st, so the end of January. And because there are a lot of sales, since it's more than just a week, and it was a very good end of January, when an item comes up that I offered on Whatnot first, I will just put up a little logo so that way y'all know and just not say it out loud, because this video is probably already going to be a little long since I have over 40 items to share with you. So we're going to scoot over here and I'm going to start with Etsy first because I had sales on Etsy, which is awesome. The first one is this vintage shirt. It is Barbie pink. It sold for $20 and the buyer paid for shipping. This is Ship and Shore. I do look out for Ship and Shore, which is a vintage brand that I find. I think it's still made, but I look for the vintage pieces, and this was Barbie pink. Also, I paid like $1 for this, so pretty happy with this sale. And it sold for $20, turning $1 into 20. Perfectly happy with that. And this next sale is amazing, and I am so grateful that I listed it. This is actually one of the items I listed doing like the decluttering of this room. This was an absolutely massive croc, and I actually paid up for this, so I'm glad I finally listed it. So not only could I recoup the cost of the item, which I paid $70 for this at an estate sale, and I sold it for, as you can see, $200. On my Etsy store, if something sells for over $35, it's free shipping, and you might be like, gasp. But that is why I put this up for $200, and this actually sold within a month of me listing it, which for an antique to vintage croc is kind of amazing. But I knew when I picked this up that it would sell between the $150 and $250 range. The larger crocs sell for more. Also, if you get them with the original top, this would have had a either ceramic top or it would have had a wooden top, but neither of those were anywhere near this. This was actually outside when I found it. So I did clean it up and it sold for $200. It costs about $27 to ship this. And then of course Etsy had to take their fees. So I actually doubled my money. So I paid $70 and I made about $80 on this sale. So it was definitely worth it to pay up, and it definitely was worth to list when I did, because apparently it was just the right place, right time. I totally expected to sit on this for a few months. So the fact that it sold within a month of me listing it, amazing. But if you see a croc like this, normally I only see these at antique stores, and I was actually floored, because this was the last day of the estate sale, that none of the antique booths had scooped this up. Because if you go to the big antique mall in Williamsburg, if you're in the Virginia area, you will literally see one of these every other booth going for this price at the antique booth. So that's because people don't want to ship them, but I am a pro and I double box this as I do with all of my fragile stuff. And again, only had to pay $8. Of course, that was also because it was going like in New England versus going to California. So that would probably save me, but really excited for a big sale at the beginning of the year. Another big sale at the beginning of the year. And I actually have more to share with you. Here is Moxie's face. There she is. She is here. I know, baby girl. All right, so this is actually 2 items going to one person, but they bought them separately instead of bundling together, which, you know, is fair. Unfortunately, eBay doesn't allow you to like bundle things very well at all, which is probably the only thing that Poshmark has over eBay, is the fact that it is impossible for eBay to bundle items, but it is like so easy for on Poshmark. Regardless, these are 2 dresses I bought at an estate sale. I paid $2 a piece for each of these dresses, and someone bought them. One for $21.14, which is an offer I sent out to watchers, and then this one was $19.90, which is another offer I sent out to watchers. So I'm guessing that like they were looking in my store and liked stuff, and I sent off different offers, and then they were like, well, I got 2 items and 2 offers, so we'll do this. And the reason why it shows as refunded is because of the fact that I was able to like ship them together. I refunded the shipping costs, which is one of the things that I do. Again, you do you in your own business, but I refund shipping overages. So also because I paid $4 in total for these 2 dresses and I sold them for over $40, and they were handmade dresses, and they were weird handmade dresses. I actually originally bought these so I could wear them, but they had, instead of having like a tie waist where the tie was outside, the tie waist was an elastic tie inside the dress. So like you basically had to pull the dress up onto your face, hold it with your mouth, adjust the waist so that way you didn't look like you were wearing a potato sack, and then put the dress back down. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I just listed them all. And I made sure to note that it was like that in the listing, but they were interesting. Yeah. Those were from the 60s. Sweet. This is a New American Eagle women's button front shirt. They are a boyfriend fit. They sold for $20. Great sale. This is a book that I bought during Thriftmas because it was new. I only pick up these Charlene Harris books when I can get like the whole series or a big chunk of the series, or if I can get them brand new. I have had a lot of luck running into brand new books the last like few months, which has been amazing. This sold for $7.87. I paid $1 for this, so I only made like a couple of dollars, but this didn't end up in the landfill, which was important to me. This, I did a little happy dance when it sold. It sold for $7.90. You'd be like, why in the world would you do a happy dance for this? And that is because I have had this for 2 years. This is one of the items that I rephotographed during my Fix It Fridays when I was doing that series. And it finally sold. I have like $1 into this shirt, so super excited that it finally sold. I figured the Adidas trefoil shirts, or the Adidas Originals, whatever you want to call them, I figured it would do better because the Originals line always seems to sell better for me than most of the equipment line. The equipment line is the mountain logo, if you did not know. If you're wondering why I'm using all these terms, it's because I worked for Adidas for 4 years, which is why I also say Adidas instead of Adidas. And I'm not going to go into my normal spiel, but if you have questions about Adidas anything, feel free to hit me on Instagram, because I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. This is an Anne Rice book. Any of her Vampire Chronicles books I find at the bins. I pick them up when they're in hardcover. If I can get a section of them that go together, I will lot them up and sell them, but the hardcovers seem to sell really fast for me. Not for a whole lot, because you see this sold for $7.90, but they always sell for me on eBay, like normally within a week of me listing them, so I always pick them up, because turning 50 cents into a few dollars in like a week, that's a great thing to me. I will do that because, again, I like books. This is another pickup I did during Thriftmas. This is that Rising Tide felted wool thing that I had to fix. I had the cashier broke it and then just gave it to me for free, so this is free. And I had to replace the little doggly thing that unzips the bag and then also re-sew the felted ball onto it. So I was able to do that, and now I have an entire baggie full of additional zipper pulls. Sweet, to fix other things if I need to, but yeah, this sold for $13. It was free. It was actually a pretty quick fix once I got the right stuff, and I'm very happy with that. This is a vintage pickup. This is Buyer 2, which if you see a Buyer, it's the same brand. It's just another, this was like their juniors line, I think. This is from the 70s. Absolutely gorgeous dress. I mean, it had like big puff sleeves. It had the peplum ruffle at the bottom. It was just gorgeous. It was pale yellow. It was a size small. Sold for $30. I don't remember if I picked this up at the bins or at a thrift store, but I know I didn't pay like even $5 for this, so I was very happy with this. This is a New Tags Craft and Borrow piece. It's the only reason I picked it up. I would not recommend picking up this brand at the thrift store. I did pick this up at the bins because it was New Tags and it sold for $9. Paid $1 for it. Perfectly happy with that. This is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen, one of the classic books by her. It sold for my full asking price of $12.87. I picked this up at the bins for 50 cents. This is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This is the first book in the Parable series by her. This is Parable of the Sower and Parable of Talents. Octavia Butler was a previously forgotten about science fiction author that has, over the last like 2 or 3 years, thanks to BookTube, risen again in and Book Talk, risen again in prominence, which is very well deserved. This is me subtly, not so subtly, recommending that if you find any Octavia Butler's books, either in pre-owned condition or new condition, I do recommend picking them up because a lot of them are not in print anymore. The Parable series has gone back into print, and some of her more well-known books like Kindred has gone back into print, but some of her older like 80s and 90s editions of her books can be very valuable. I currently have one in my collection that is just a little mass market paperback book that's worth over $40. So if you see Octavia Butler out in the wild, I do recommend picking it up, especially if you're picking it up for $1 or less, regardless of the condition it's in. Well, not regardless. If it's like, looks like it's been eaten by mice and colored on, don't get that, but you know what I mean. I managed to buy them brand new, but not at brand new prices, so I could sell them at brand new prices. I was very excited. Thank you, Mommy, for being my good luck charm on this shopping trip, but it sold for my full asking price of $16.87, and I paid $4 for this book originally, so amazing. This is a J. Jill Love of Linen, and I pick up linen whenever I find it because it sells for me. It's one of my favorite fabrics to wear when I find it in my size. Sold for my full asking price of $21.87. This was a 1X, so this was one of the plus size pieces. This is from the big vintage buyout that I have a quarter into this. Sold for $20, and this reminds me very much of my grandmother, and it's sold to someone who I feel would be very much like my grandmother, and so that made me very happy when I saw the name that came up. It's sold to a little Asian lady, and my grandmother's a Japanese Asian lady, and this is something that my grandmother would have worn. Sold for $20, and it made me have warm and fuzzies inside. I only paid a quarter for it, and the reason I picked this up is while it may not be a popular style for most people, there is a certain demographic, as I just mentioned, who loves this stuff. So that's why I picked it up, and it made me feel very happy that it went to the buyer I had in mind. This is from that big book buyout. Paid 10 cents for this. Sold my full asking price of $11.87. It's Victor Hugo's selected poems. I would not recommend picking this up for resale unless, of course, you get a lot of Victor Hugo books, either his poetry or his treatises or his critical essays, and sell it as a lot unless you can get it in brand new condition. This is something I picked up for Thriftmas 2 years ago. You can see how long I've had it. This is a Paana. The reason I picked it up is because when I looked at comps, the comps looked really good 2 years ago. And that's how funny reselling is sometimes. It finally sold for $9. I did pay $4 for this at the DAV, so I doubled my money, but it took way too long. This also took way too long to sell, but I have a weakness for otagiri in general. I have had these for over 3 years now. I will still continue to pick up otagiri almost every single time I find it. These were the collaboration they did with Gibson Greetings, and it sold for $10. Actually, 2 of these sold. I paid 50 cents for each one, so I have $1 into it, sold it for 10. I actually had 3 of these, and a single one had already sold. So really happy that these sold and went off to a new home, and I will still probably pick them up. Maybe not for you though, since it sold for $5 a piece. Unless, you know, you have a booth or an antique booth and then you just need filler. Maybe that would work for you then. Another item I picked up at the bins, I have 25 cents into this. This was a brand new Teaching Yourself electric bass. It still had the CD, the sealed CD attached inside of it. Sold for $19.87. Again, I love the bins for books so much. So much. Speaking of, I actually found all of these at the bins. This is a set of Walter J. Black's Classics Club Collection. It was 28 of them. These are classics from like Homer and the Iliad, Jane Austen books, and the Bronte sisters. There were a bunch of just classical works of fiction in here. Hardcover books at the bins are 50 cents each. So when I started finding one, and then I saw a second one, and then I kept finding them, you best believe I dug until I pulled all of them out. And I sold this set very quickly. So these sold within 2 weeks of me listing them, which for vintage books is kind of awesome. And they sold on an offer for $118.89. So I turned $14 into $118 in 2 weeks with vintage books. Now, these were from the 40s. If you find these, not all of them are from 1942. They're from the 40s. And actually, I found a smaller set of these recently, which will be in a future What Sold video. But those also sold in a week, and it was only 4 books. And they sold for roughly like this, around $4 to $5 a piece. So if you can find a whole bunch of them, it is definitely worth it, in my opinion, to pick them up. And this is one of the instances, because it was such a big lot and it was so heavy, that I actually made the buyer pay for the shipping. So they paid most of the other books, all of the other books that you've seen in this video, it's been free shipping except for this set. So they actually in total paid $150 for this set of books for me to ship them out. So amazing sale. Another reason why I really love books. And again, my specialty in books is between like the 1930s and the 1980s. Too new for the antique dealers and too old for the FBA sellers. So that's my sweet spot. I love it there. This is a JCrew factory dress. I actually had this in my own rotating reseller closet for quite a while. I decided to let it go because I wasn't really wearing it. And it sold for $13.05. I actually wore this to the very first Thanksgiving dinner I had with my partner. Memories. Okay. Sold for $13.05. This is something I bought at the thrift store for $6. Wore it multiple times, sold it for $13, perfectly happy with that. This is a set of books where I offered up each book individually and they didn't sell, so that's when I decided to lot them up, and they did, because I realized that they were all part of the Vorkosagin saga by Louis McMaster Bujold, which is his most famous series. I think that also has like 15 or 16 books in it, 17 books, I don't know. It has a lot of books in it. It sold for $12.87. I have 75 cents into this. This I picked up at Thriftmas a long time ago at the Restore. These are Hull. It was one of those like jaws on floor moments that I couldn't believe that they didn't know what these were and marked them up, because that Restore has a tendency to do that with vintage pottery and glass. But they missed these, so I paid $1 per mug, so I have $2 into these, and it sold for $43.74, and the buyer paid for shipping, so this was awesome. I love it. It's, again, even on thrift stores that mark stuff up, you can still find wins. It just depends on your brand knowledge, and they can't know everything, just like you can't know everything, which is why it's always good to be learning and consuming reseller YouTube, which is what I still do. So this was an absolute delight to listen to. I love music like this so much. I was a little sad that it sold, because I absolutely loved listening to this while I was working. This is Glow, which is probably one of the most famous songs by the Mills Brothers, and I love this like doo-wop music so much, like the old vintage lounge music and like 30s, 40s, and 50s musics I love. Sold for $12.87. I paid $1 for this at an estate sale. Another find from the bins. I have 50 cents into this. Sold for $9.87. This was from the big book buyout. I have 10 cents into this. This is Watt by Samuel Beckett. This is a writer where even if you find these books in used condition, some of his works and some of his vintage editions of his books can still be valuable. So if you find books by Samuel Beckett, maybe look them up. Most of them you're not going to be able to scan because they're going to be vintage. So I would recommend, if you find Samuel Beckett, to look it up and see if it's worth reselling for you and your business model. But with 10 cents into this, and it was still in new condition, $10.87, perfectly happy with that. Another one from that same buyout, this sold for $10. This one I would not pick up unless it was in brand new condition. So again, it's just like any other genre. Some people are like, I can't believe you know so much about books. It's just like with anything else. Like, it's just stuff that I've learned because I'm interested in it. So if there is like a genre or niche in reselling or in your life that you have a lot of knowledge in, chances are that you can take that into reselling and make money off of it if that's something you want to do. This is an LL Bean piece. This I picked up in Tennessee. And it sold for $19.90. It was brand new with tags, and I paid $5 for this at that Goodwill in Tennessee. This is something I would not pick up, and I actually did not pick these up. These came to me in a thread-up box. They are a pair of Vince Camuto. They are the Seville Classics. They're faux leather. It's just a pair of classic pointed toe pumps, sold for $14. I have $6.20 into each pair of shoes in this box. So again, I will probably never, unless it's a collab, probably never buy another shoebox from thredUP ever again, because no, just no. I have not had great luck with them. So this is also from the big vintage buyout. I have a quarter into this, sold for $14.30. This was just a ruffle, like neck, mock neck with like a little ruffly thing, polyester shirt. Again, I have a quarter into it. Sold it for $14.30. Great. Another vintage book. This is Louisa May Alcott, who is the same woman who wrote Little Women, by the way, if you did not know. This is her book, Good Wives. This person left me a really lovely review, which was nice. But I found this at the bins for 50 cents. It sold for $10.94, so easily made $5 off of this. Very happy. This is a pair of Columbia shorts. I will pick up Columbia whenever I find it at the bins because it does sell for me, and this actually sold pretty much the week I listed it for my full asking price of $14.87. So it's January and people are buying shorts. This is another one of those thredUP shoe sales. I don't know how I managed to get two in the same week. I think they might have actually come from the same box too. This is Gentle Soles. These are like the Rory slip-on mule. I actually had to take these out of my inventory, clean the soles some more around the edge because I've had these for so long and they weren't selling, and it's because I didn't want to clean them because the sole of these were like gray. So I finally just put in an extra like 10 minutes worth of work, and as soon as I relisted them, they sold that day. I should have just done them to begin with, but I don't like cleaning shoes, which is why you guys really don't see a whole lot of shoes on this channel, and why I'm not going to do shoe boxes anymore unless it's collab. It's just because I'm not a real big fan of shoes. So I am a big fan of shoes. I just don't want to clean them. So sold for $20. Again, have about $6.25 into that. This next item is Triot Los Angeles, which is not a brand I'd ever heard of before, but I really liked this jacket. I actually picked this up at the bins, so I have about like $2.50 into it because it was a pretty heavy duty trucker jacket. It was straight cotton, which was awesome. And it sold for $20. So really happy. Also, this is another item that sold within 48 hours of me listing it, which was great, especially for a brand I had never heard of before. This is a vintage Graz Anatomy book. This is from the 70s. It sold for $10. I picked this up a super long time ago at an estate sale, like 2 or 3 years ago, but it took me forever to get around to listing it. Again, trying to get through my death pile. Sold for $10. I like less than $1, like 50 cents. I don't know. I know like when I can't, it's so long ago, I don't even remember. I know I paid less than $1 for it. Another book I paid less than $1 for. I pick up first edition Ken Follett's Pillars of Earth anytime I find them because they always sell for me. It depends on the condition how much they sell, but they sell anywhere from like $15 to $35 unless you get like a signed one. If you get a signed one, then of course it could sell for way more money, but this is I think the 3rd or 4th time I have sold this exact book. It sold for $25, and again I have 50 cents into it, so if you see a first edition copy of Pillars of Earth, get it. It is his most well-known novel, which is why it consistently sells. I have my own first edition copy that I will keep forever. This is a pair of Levi's. They are a size 29. They have a 3-inch inseam and they sold for $11.50. Another bin's fine. The Bodacious Period men's medium shirt with a dinosaur on it I thought was super cute. I picked this up at the bins and it sold for $7. This is something that I knew the style would sell it no matter what, so I was really excited about that. This is another item I picked up at an estate sale. I have $1 into this. This is an Angora blend cardigan. Had no size at all, had no material tag, but it was vintage and it was from the 80s based on the other stuff in the closet, also the tag. This came from an estate sale of a Korean lady. So I had to estimate ages of clothes and sizes based on the measurements, and 2, the other items in the closet to figure out when things were from. And so again, it's just a lot of context clues. So I was able to describe it really well. In addition, when I was handling this, I started breaking out in hives, which, considering it was like that fluffy, fuzzy material, I knew immediately then it was Angora because I am allergic to rabbits. Clues that you might not have picked up on because you don't have the same issues I do. But it did sell for $19.90. Again, I paid $1 for it. This is a Starbucks mug. This is one of the good Starbucks mugs. This is one of the 3D Starbucks mugs, and it's for Boston. So any of these 3D major cities. Also, I saw Lori Tata in one of her videos. She actually owns this mug, and so it was funny because I saw her drink out of that mug and then literally saw the mug at the Goodwill like that week. So I picked it up, of course. I think they marked this one up, so I think I paid like $2 or $3 for this one, and it sold for $16. Thought that was great. This is a big order from one of the vintage buyers that I have established. They are not a viewer of the channel, but they have bought big orders from me before. And they bought this 90s Alfred Dunner stunner that I picked up because it was just an amazing purple sweater, vintage sweater from the 90s. It like had big blue roses all over it, and it was purple, and you all know purple people love purple. She bought that for $16. This is a Russell Athletics 4Q Military Academy sweatshirt that I picked up at an estate sale. I paid $2 for that, sold it for $16. Another 90s piece, this I picked up at a Goodwill in Tennessee. I picked it up only because the brand name was Eileen, and it was spelled A-I-L-E-E-N, which is how my heart dog's name is spelled, which this is her. You guys only ever see Moxie really on this channel, but this is my other fur baby. This is Eileen, Border Collie. She's a Merle Border Collie, and she is my heart dog, and I love her with my whole self. But the only reason I picked up this sweater is, 1, I have good luck with vintage knitwear, and 2, because it's the same name as my dog. So sold it for $11. I paid I think that one was half off, so I paid $2.50 for it. This nautical vintage 80s piece, knitwear, which you actually see me modeling here, was one I got like a super long time ago at a thrift store, so I have $5 into that, sold for $12. And then these 2 vintage jackets are both sold for $20 a piece, and these are from the big vintage buyout, so I have 25 cents into each one of these jackets. So if you see refunded on any of the ones that I've shown you, it's because, again, I refund shipping overages, and because I have flat rate shipping on all of my items, that means that they paid shipping for each individual item. So they paid anywhere from $5 to $9 per item to ship it, and I could pack everything into one 12 by 12 by 8 box, so it wasn't going to cost between $30 and $50 to ship this, so I just refunded the shipping overages. That's what the refunded means. It doesn't mean I refunded them for the item, it just means I did shipping overage refund. Really great sale. I think that's the second time in January that they ordered from me. I think they were doing some kind of production. This is another book from that big book buyout. This is The Anatomy of a Movement. This is a big history book. Again, not one I would have bought unless it was brand new. Sold for $15.19. This is actually from that one video that YouTube decided to pop off for some reason. I think it's at like 17,000 views now, which is so weird because I go to the bins every week and it just decided that one was the one. But this is the quilt from that video. I will link that up above if you've magically not seen it yet. They actually ended up giving this to me for free because she didn't ring it up. She set it aside, and it wasn't until I got home and was doing like cost averaging that I realized she didn't ring me up for the quilt, because the quilts, they do like a whatever price, like they normally charge between $2 and $5 depending on the quilt or the linen. They don't count that as part of the weighing portion. So I ended up getting this for free. It sold for $65. Now I did have to repiece some of the items back together, some of the blocks back together. So normally what I do when I buy a quilt is, of course, immediately wash it in hot water because I don't want any bugs. Then after it's dry, I lay it out, and in the bright light, like I would photograph it on the bed, and then I go through and look at every single attachment, and I make sure that they're all attached. Like I pull on it to make sure that there aren't any holes or any of the pieces are coming apart. And then if they are, I restitch them back together. You don't have to do that if you're not comfortable. You just would have to disclose it and maybe sell it for a lesser price. I do know how to do that. I do know how to fix quilts, so I will do that, and then I can get it for more, and normally there's more confidence because there's not anything wrong with it. All to say that this sold for $65, and this was amazing. If I could have figured out the exact cross pattern, like if I could figure out the exact pattern this was, I might have been able to command a higher price, but I couldn't figure out what cross pattern this was because this is a mixture between a barn door and a cross pattern, and I couldn't figure out which they were, so I just listed it as a cross pattern and let it go. Again, more information than you probably needed, but that is because I only have one more sale to share with you, and that is this set of his dark materials. Another one of those where, you know, I listed them separately and then eventually realized, oh wait, I have the whole set. Let me put it together. And they sold pretty quickly after I did that for $11.87. So I think that that's great. And it's his Dark Materials, which is the most well-known trilogy by Philip Pullman. So that's amazing. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this very long what sold video. I know I enjoyed this very long what sold video because this is probably the best set of 10-11 days that I've ever had, with all of these like high dollar sales at the end of January, which made me feel like this 2024 was just going to be balls to the wall awesome. And then February humbled me so quick. But we will get into that another time. My next video will be the, you know, wall of accountability, my sales and stuff. So hopefully I will see you in the next video, and until then, bye. Bye. Hero, hero. I wanna be a hero.